Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just finished watching the Lakers beat the Sacramento Kings 127-120 to improve to 2-1 on the season, 1-0 in this upcoming stretch without Luka Doncic. And Austin Reaves dropped a career-high 51 points, surpassing his previous career high of 45 last season against Indiana. But that game came without Luka Doncic and LeBron James. So we've now seen a small sample size, but a sample size nonetheless, of Austin Reaves really stepping up when the Lakers have been shorthanded and carrying the offense in a way that is all-star-esque, dare I say. He outplayed DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine almost single-handedly. Those two guys, Austin had 51 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists. Those guys combined for 53 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. So I would argue he did outplay them, which just speaks to the caliber of player that Austin Reaves has continued to ascend into. And just an incredible win for the Lakers, a huge win given everything that just happened today with Luka Doncic being ruled out for at least a week, Jackson Hayes being ruled out as well, Gabe Vincent getting hurt in the third quarter, Marcus Smart also having a scare, and briefly going back to the locker room area to go on the bike to test out his right leg. So we have a lot to touch on the injury front and still trying to see what information we could get coming out of this. But a big win for the Lakers. At a minimum, they will be going 1-3 or 1-4 or whatever over this stretch of 4 to 6 games that Luka will be out. And I think with the way they played tonight, it looks like they could potentially go 500, maybe even go above it. We'll see how sustainable this is moving forward. They don't get a break. They get a hungry Portland team that's already in LA. They did play tonight against the Clippers, but they get a Portland team tomorrow. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. Those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I like this one from Brody. Says AR-15 no more, AR-51 only. I like that one. Kevin Cambridge, Late Night Gang. What's up, everybody? All right, let's get into the overarching thought and then notable performers, stat of the night, 3 takeaways, and then I'll get into your questions. I see we already have a super chat. So overarching thought for me is Austin Reaves is him, with him in all caps. And we have to start with Austin because there was a lot to take away from this game in a positive sense for the Lakers. And I will be touching on that in my notable performer section and my takeaway section. But Austin was the story of tonight. 51 points, 12 of 22 shooting. He scored 51 points on 22 shots, 6 of 10 on threes, 21 of 22 on free throws, both career high marks. He had the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Joel Embiid whistle tonight. They could not stop fouling him. They cannot keep him off the free throw line. As aforementioned, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, 2 turnovers, which is really impressive. That assist to turnover ratio of 9-2. Lakers were plus 22 with Austin on the floor, by far the best plus minus individually of any player. And they really struggled in the minutes Austin was off the floor. Plus 22 in his 39 minutes, and the 9 minutes he was off the floor, they were minus 15. So this is going to be something to monitor, that the Lakers really struggled when Austin was off the floor and the offense just could not generate good looks consistently. And part of this, Gabe did get hurt, and Gabe did not have a good game offensively. Marcus Smart, I thought, was a bit up and down offensively, did have 11 points, 5 assists, and I'll touch on him a little bit later. But the Lakers are like right now, we're carried offensively by Austin Reaves to a remarkable degree. And we've seen this, as aforementioned, like from Austin before. I think about the Boston game a couple seasons ago, last season, the Indiana game, the Denver game. But this one, it felt at an even higher level, right? Because he's still playing with some teammates that are like running pick and rolls with DeAndre Ayton, who he's only played a few games with. And you have Marcus Smart out there, Jake LaRavia. It's a relatively new group. There's some Dalton Connect minutes, Chris Magnon. This just happened. We just got the announcement a few hours ago that Luka is going to be out. And I thought Austin carried this group in a way that, again, I don't know how many players are capable of the type of night he just had. And this is not to put Austin in certain conversations, but like 51, 11, and 9 is, I don't care. Like, yes, the Kings defense makes the Lakers defense look like the 2004 Pistons. Like the Kings are one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So to some degree, this was matchup based, right? But Domantas Sabonis had a really rough performance, and the Kings just don't have good perimeter defenders with the exception of Keon Ellis. Devin Carter came in for a little bit. He just was fouling left and right and then eventually got taken out. So the Kings don't have a lot of perimeter defense. That is, of course, the caveat here. But Austin, like the Lakers needed him to step up. I remember when, for those who watched my live earlier, the first thing I said when I said, who needs to step up? It's Austin. Like the Lakers are going to go as far as Austin can take them in this stretch. And he took them pretty far tonight. And we'll see moving forward how much, like, again, it's less than 24 hours until the Lakers play again against the Portland team that is much better defensively, with probably going to put Tamani Kamara on Austin, and they have Matisse Thybulle, and like they have Donovan Clingan as a rim protector compared to Domantas Sabonis. So totally different team personnel. Portland looks like a group that, is certainly a top 15 defense, but could be a top 10 defense this season. And we saw they closed the season really strong. They've started the season really strong. So it's going to be a tough game for LA shorthanded. And we don't know yet if Gabe Vincent or Mark, like what's up with Vincent and Smart. They could be even more shorthanded, and we have to see Nick Smith Jr. and Bronny James. So a lot to be determined in the next 20 hours or so for the Lakers. But Austin was incredible tonight, and he just has this ability to scale up in usage, and like the pick and roll. I mean, I don't want to compare him and Luka because they're obviously different players, and Luka's at a totally different level. But like Austin's ability to just run a similar amount of pick and roll and have a similar amount of usage, and I thought he took some important steps with DeAndre Ayton and their two-man chemistry. Also spanned some Austin Rui two-man game, and just incredible. And then again, the 22 free throws, they just could not keep him off of the free throw line. But story of the game tonight by far was Austin Reaves and his ability to assume a larger role, assume more usage, and do so at a very efficient level. And now for the season, Austin Reaves averages 34 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, 10 assists per game. He is averaging nearly a 35-point triple-double for the season, 3 games, 74% true shooting percentage, which is like just ridiculous, incredible, 45% three-point percentage. So he went from not being able to hit threes for like 3 straight games to the 6 for 10 performance tonight, completely shifting his three-point percentage. So small sample size left and right, but still really impressive stuff from Austin. And for a guy who is in a contract season and has a lot of eyeballs on him, both with Laker fans, with Laker management, with his teammates, with everybody, is what is Austin going to do this season going into free agency? This has been a pretty strong start. And this is a guy who, if he wants 35, 37, 40 million, he's playing that way right now. He's earning that. So we shall see what type of how this continues to develop and what he ultimately gets next summer. But for those who were doubting him and those who are wondering if he was worth the money, so far he's I think outperformed even his potential contract to start this season. Then notable performers obviously start with Austin, 51, 11, and 9. But DeAndre Ayton, 22 points, 15 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 3 turnovers, 10 for 17 shooting, 2 for 4 on free throws. He outplayed Domantas Sabonis head to head. And going back now multiple seasons, how many times has Domantas Sabonis been a thorn in the Lakers' side? And how many times have the Lakers lost to the Kings or had games closer than expected against the Kings because Domantas Sabonis matched or surpassed Anthony Davis head to head? And for DeAndre Ayton to come in to draw multiple fouls on Sabonis. But even before Sabonis was in foul trouble, I thought that first shift, DeAndre Ayton decidedly outplayed him. I thought as the game progressed, Sabonis started to play a bit better, and he still finished with 10 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. But overall, DeAndre Ayton was the more impactful center tonight. This is the second straight game he has outplayed his competition head to head, with the previous game being Minnesota and Gobert and Naz Reid. So, like, yes, there are the turnovers, and like there will occasionally be some mistakes from DeAndre Ayton that can frustrate. And there are times he gets the ball and you want him to go up a little stronger in the paint, right? But I thought the chemistry we saw a lob from Gabe. Like I mentioned that in my Luka live, that I thought Ayton and Gabe actually have pretty good timing and rhythm with their 2-man game in the pick and roll. But we saw some progress with Austin and Ayton. We saw a lot of hustle plays from DeAndre Ayton, like beating Domantas Sabonis in transition. And that would, going back to, again, some of the previous AD Sabonis matchups, Sabonis would often be the one beating AD down the floor in transition. And his motor was at a certain level that AD wouldn't consistently match. And I thought for the most part, like Ayton matched, if not surpassed, Sabonis's motor, and that had been a weak spot or a weakness for the Lakers in this matchup in previous seasons. So, I mean, by far, obviously his best game from a performance perspective, and we kind of expected that some of that usage, he nearly matched Austin in actual shot attempts, but obviously factoring in usage and free throws, Austin was at a much higher level. But 17 field goal attempts was the second highest by 7 shots. Rui had 10 field goal attempts. Jake LaRavia had 10 as well. So DeAndre Ayton was, I think, the biggest beneficiary just from an offensive, like, assuming more usage perspective outside of course, Austin. And I thought he benefited a lot from just different guys attacking from different spots. That there was this sort of, especially when Austin was off the floor, that there was sort of this, like, we don't really know where the ball handling and playmaking is going to come from. And some of that, I think, worked to Ayton's favor. But yeah, just a really impressive game from Ayton, and he continues to look more comfortable, and I think play largely the role that the Lakers wanted him to play. Rui Hachimura, 18 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. He was eating early. He had 10 points in the first quarter. I don't think, or maybe scored a little bit in the second, but I think he had like 14 going into the fourth, and then had another 4 points in the fourth. But he was a guy who, I mentioned him operating off the ball, and like I didn't necessarily expect the Lakers to run more offense for him, but he was someone that just with his movement could benefit again from more shots going across the team. And he was a guy who, they had one play where he had like a drive on the right side that was kind of in isolation, but for the most part, it was a lot of him coming off of screens or benefiting from getting out in transition, back cuts, spot ups, catch and shoot, like the typical Rui stuff offensively, just at a little bit of a higher level. Marcus Smart, really liked him in a starting role, really liked the defensive tenacity. I don't know how many deflections. He didn't have a steal, but definitely had several deflections, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, was the Lakers' best secondary ball handler / playmaker tonight. But certainly a big drop off from Austin to him. And it's something that the Lakers are going to have to figure out over the next week, is how they can try to survive the Austin list minutes, because they can't play him 39 minutes a game. I mean, like, I don't think he's going to play 39 tomorrow night. We'll see. Maybe he does. But there's a limit to, I think, putting this much on his plate right now. I think they need to find ways to get other guys involved. Although with Gabe now potentially out for a little bit, like, I would be surprised if he plays tomorrow, coming off of leaving this game early. X-rays were negative on him, but we don't yet know his status, or at least I haven't seen it yet. I'm trying to track it on Twitter. Okay, so according to Kobe Price of the Southern California News Group, Gabe Vincent has a boot as he left the locker room. So that is not a good sign for him to play tomorrow. He's probably out tomorrow. I'm sweating right now in this hoodie. Then Jake LaRavia, I thought, played some really big minutes, 11 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Did not shoot the ball well. He continues to struggle with his shot overall, but did hit a big 3 and made some big plays. Had the and one. And I thought like he was a guy who, remember going back to, I thought the primary guys who had to assume more usage and run the offense and kind of be the guys to dictate the Lakers' offensive success were Austin, Gabe, Marcus, and Jake. And I thought Austin, of course, stepped up in a huge way, but Marcus and Jake in particular, I thought stepped up. Gabe was kind of continued some of the struggles that he's had up to this point, and then ended up getting injured. So he was kind of the outlier there, or the one who didn't necessarily step up, but Austin kind of did it enough for everybody. But yeah, I liked this was Jake's best game in my opinion as a Laker, and still some room for improvement, particularly as a finisher and as a shooter. But I thought you saw the more well-rounded nature to his game. Vando, I thought, he had 9 points, Lakers were plus 15 in his 27 minutes. He had to play a bit more, no Jackson, so he's the backup 5. Then once Gabe went out, he started to play a bit more with Ayton, and he closed the game for the Lakers, 9 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. The offensive possessions are still rough. Like he did have a couple of nice finishes. He had a transition finish. He also had the lob from Austin. Didn't take a 3, and I think that's probably for the best. Like at this point, I don't think Vando should be taking 3s. He's starting to turn down corner 3s. I think that's the right thing to do. I just don't like. I think that ship has sailed of him being a reliable 3-point shooter at this stage of his career, and I think we've seen him airball multiple 3s this season. I think they should just move on from that. And if he gets it in the corner, it's how can I turn this into like a dribble handoff for someone to come off this screen and either take a 3 or get downhill or something. I really think at this point, like he should just not be like, you should treat Vando shooting 3s as like DeAndre Ayton shooting 3s. Like it should just not be part of his shot diet. And that was about it. Like I liked Chris Magnon's minutes coming in. Like he only played 3 minutes, but he made his debut. He ended up being available for tonight's game. So it was not only his season debut, but his debut as a Laker overall, just because he didn't play in the preseason. And I thought defensively, he held his own. He had a nice block on Zach LaVine on a baseline out of bounds play. He also had a nice feed to Ayton that Ayton missed, but it would have been a nice assist had Ayton finished that. So we only saw him for one shift. It was a brief shift, but for a two-way guy to step in and play his first minutes in like this situation, I thought he held up fine. The shot, like we saw the 1-3 that he took, it is not the prettiest shot, we'll say, right? But I think it was fine. Like I thought he looked good defensively. Then Dalton played 13 minutes. I don't know. In more turnovers than made shots, and they just have not been able to figure out how to use him with this group yet. I think when we've seen him in more like rotation, I don't know. It's just been with the full group or close to the full group, they just have not been able to unlock him for whatever reason. The defense continues to be a problem. Sacramento is targeting him on that end to varying degrees of success, and DeRozan got him once or twice, and Russ got him, and it's just I don't know. That one's tough. Like someone had the comment earlier that like this is Dalton's big opportunity, and it just continues to not go well up to this point in the season. Then stat of the night for me: 41 of 46 free throws for LA, 89%. This is back-to-back games of 80+% on free throws for LA after the stinker in the opener against Golden State, but 46 free throws is a lot. I thought it was an interesting game from a refereeing perspective, because I did think the Lakers got a good whistle through the first 3 quarters. I think they attempted 39 free throws through the first 3 quarters. Then the refs kind of overcorrected it and just stopped calling fouls against the Kings. And I felt like that was a big part of Sacramento getting like back into the game and regaining the lead and almost looking like they were potentially going to win the game. Was they were like, okay, well, we called all these fouls against the Kings, so we're just going to stop calling fouls against the Kings. And I think until like the midway point of the fourth, it was like 5-0 in terms of Kings shooting 5 free throws, Lakers shooting 0. And then eventually with the fouling late and stuff, the Lakers got a few more free throws, but they just continue to draw fouls at a remarkable rate. Right. And this is a big advantage for this team. Like they lost they gave up 13 offensive rebounds and they lost the 3-point battle decidedly, minus 30 at the 3-point line. Kings hit 18, Lakers hit only 8. But when you win the free throw battle by 29, that's where you make up for that. So this has been a big advantage for LA so far, has been the free throw battle up to this point. And I suspect that will continue to be a trend. They will be among the league leaders, if not the league leader, in free throw rate, free throws per game, free throws per 100 possessions. And then a few quick takeaways, then we will get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1, silver linings without Luka. So I think the big one is just testing Austin and seeing what he could do in a larger role. And now we continue to see like he can scale up in an impressive way. I thought DeAndre Ayton being more involved and getting him more comfortable, him developing more 2-man game with Austin and Gabe and Marcus, I think that is a positive. I think for all the new guys, like them getting a little bit more involved in the offense, I thought this was probably the best offensive performance for each of them. And it makes sense not having Luka and LeBron. You're going to need more of a group effort offensively. But I think to me, one of the big things that they need to take from this stretch moving forward is a Luka and LeBron-less offensive identity. And I think we're seeing it's going to be relying more on Austin. And I think there's things they could learn from this that they could apply moving forward. But like up to this point, the non-Luka minutes had been a problem. And they finally figured that out with Austin. So I think that's a positive. But like just continuing to test and tinker and figure out different things of who can do what and what are the best lineup combinations, 2-man combinations, 3-man combinations, 4-man combinations. And just like, I think this is a period for experimenting. This is a period of discovery for LA. And I do not expect this group to look like this, obviously, moving forward, because Luka will be coming back. LeBron will be coming back, and we'll see how long Gabe is potentially out. But I think there are plenty of silver linings from this, in addition to winning, right? Like, because that's the biggest silver lining of all, is they won the game. They're 2-1. They continue to keep up with the rest of the West. And even if they lose tomorrow, they're at least 2-2, 1-1 without Luka. Like, I think that's a win up to this point with the schedule. Takeaway number 2 is the new temporary rotation. So we had Austin play 39, Rui play 40. I had said earlier today, I suspected that they would lean into the top 7, which is what they did. The top 7 all played 19 or more minutes. I think Gabe would have ended up playing somewhere in the mid-20s or so, at least, if he had not gone down. So he's probably in that like 25 to 28 range if he doesn't suffer the ankle injury. So they really leaned on the top 7 of the starters, plus Vando and Jake LaRavia off the bench. I was a little surprised that Marcus started over LaRavia, just from a rebounding perspective, a positional size perspective. And also I thought they'd want to stagger Marcus and Gabe and Austin, but they did kind of stagger it in a way, right? And I think it was Marcus and Gabe and LaRavia in the non-Austin minutes for some stretches there. So they ended up figuring it out. But I thought it was also interesting that like Marcus kind of like he did suffer the injury or whatever, the tweak in the fourth quarter, and he ended up playing only 31 minutes. And it feels like that's probably a realistic cap for Marcus right now. Like they're trying to be cautious with his minutes. So I don't think it kind of worked out in a weird way where he didn't play much more than that. But I think they got to be careful with overtaxing him, because he's a guy who has dealt with multiple injuries over the last couple of years. And he's a really important piece for their defense and just for, I think, the spirit of the team, that they got to be careful not to overtax him. But the rest of the guys, I think like Ayton playing 36, like that's fine. Vando at 27, Jake at 33. So new rotation. It seems like they're going to lean on that top 7. Now with Gabe out, it becomes the top 6. Now we're getting into tough territory with Dalton and Mignon and Coloco, Nick Smith, Bronny James. One of those, Dalton's going to play, but then like another one of those guys has to probably play at least 8 to 10 minutes, because I think the minutes are going to be relatively similar moving forward. So that there will be, you're now splitting Gabe's 19 minutes across, I guess the top 6 will all play a little bit more. Maybe Dalton plays a little bit more, but you're still probably going to have somewhere between like 8 to 10 minutes remaining from that pie. So I don't know who that's going to be, right? And that's probably not a player that should be playing 8 to 10 minutes. So we'll see how those minutes go. And if the Lakers again, just kind of lean even more on the top 6 or 7 moving forward. And we still don't know yet how long Gabe is potentially going to be out. And then injuries, as I've now mentioned a few times, so Luka's out for at least a week. LeBron is still out. Adu Thero's still out. Maxi Kleba's out. Jackson Hayes, have not seen any update on whether he is going to play tomorrow, but based on him not playing tonight, I mean, maybe he's back tomorrow. We'll see. Gabe left the locker room in a boot. That is not a good sign, especially that's not a good sign. So the x-rays were negative, but one would have to think he's out. Typically for that, I'm sure you guys saw the injury in the replay. He kind of injured it twice. He had the initial one, and then he stepped again, and it kind of folded. So for anyone who's sprained an ankle, it's going to be probably a week or two. That's how those things tend to go. Maybe there's a way he could play through it before then, but the Lakers probably they're already down to 7 rotation players, and then now they're probably down to 6. Maybe they get Jackson back tomorrow or middle of the week for the Minnesota game, but they're in just a really tough spot right now, health-wise, where everyone's going down, and we still don't yet know. I mean, Marcus returned to the game for the final 30 seconds, but with a guy in his early 30s back to back, I don't know where that's going to be at either. So they're in a tough spot where we talked about the injuries earlier and how it just was this unfortunate break that the Lakers continue to have to deal with season after season. Then Gabe got hurt. Then Marcus tweaked something. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who's available tomorrow and what the rotation ultimately looks like. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. First one from the Enigma. Thank you for the super chat. I never hated Austin, but I wasn't a big believer in his fit long term. But honestly, at this point, just sign him for whatever he wants. He's won me over. So I see we have an Austin convert in the chat here. Yeah, I mean, look, Austin is not a perfect player, and there are certainly, I think, long-term questions about the fit with him and Luka. And I think more so defensively, I think at this point, Austin is shown enough of a shape shifting ability offensively that, with maybe the exception of the catch and shoot spot up stuff that I've talked about, that I think is really important to fitting next to Luka, being a high 30s, ideally 40+% catch and shoot guy. So defenses cannot play off of you, cannot cheat off of you, cannot ignore you in the playoffs. As long as he kind of hits that threshold, which I think he's capable of because he's done it earlier in his career, I think the fit is just clear offensively. Now defensively, we got to see. One note: the Lakers had I have it here, 113.1 defensive rating, so that would be their best defensive rating of any game this season. I think it was a step in the right direction on the defensive end against the Sacramento team that has a lot of firepower. So, that's something that they still got to figure out is the defensive end with the Austin Luka pairing. But yeah, I mean, Austin has this dude. The funny thing with some of the Austin hate is, I think I got a question a couple streams ago about him being a stat padder or caring about his numbers, comparing him to Russ, I believe, which good friend of the pod, Russell Westbrook, had 18 points, hit 4 threes. He was he was feeling it tonight. It was a Russ revenge game, but also missed 4 free throws, and those were pretty big free throws at the respective times. But Austin is just a hooper. Austin just wants to win. Austin is willing to do whatever the team needs him to do. And I think even if you're skeptical of the long-term fit of Luka and Austin, which if you still are, I get it to a degree. I don't agree with it, but I get it to a degree. It's hard not to just watch Austin play and like that style of play and like his character and who he is, what he stands for, what he's about. He's about basketball and he's about his teammates and his team. And I think he's just a good dude. So I know that's ultimately not what determines whether the Lakers are a championship team in the future, but I think I just think that there's a lot more positive than negative with him. And some people tend to just focus on the negative for whatever reason. Oots of the Wee, thank you for the super chat. I better not ever hear another imposter Laker fan say we need to trade AR again. If it wasn't obvious before, AR is vital to the Lakers' success. I agree. That's why I fielded at this point what feels like hundreds of Austin trade questions, and I don't know how many I've actually agreed to. Like, and again, like I would say 95 at least % of the players that have been proposed to me for Austin were nowhere near capable of doing what he did tonight. And again, this is a very specific context of like, can you step up with Luka and LeBron out? And there are other things that go into a championship, caliber player, a championship starting group, a championship closing group. And there are certainly players who are better defenders and might complement Luka better, right? In theory. But Austin is really like, he's the ultimate insurance policy for the Lakers in terms of if LeBron or Luka goes down, we've seen what he's capable of doing next to just one of them, or if they're both out, like he can put the team on his back, which is what he did tonight. So yeah, I'm with you. Like there's always exceptions, right? Like if Giannis becomes available, okay, that's maybe a different story here, but for Jonathan Isaac and some of the like bench players that he has been offered for in the chat at times, I can't get anywhere close to there. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. AR needs to be a Laker for life. He shines in the spotlight. Yeah. And I would even say like his playoff stuff, I think has been a little bit overblown, but obviously again, did not shoot well against the Nuggets and did not shoot well against the Wolves. And at times that series was picked on defensively and had some struggles with turnovers and whatnot. But I think for the most part, when the moment is there, like he steps up to the occasion. And well, like, I want people to like remember these types of nights when, maybe even tomorrow night, the Lakers lose at home to Portland and Austin doesn't score 50 again. And then there will be the people that want to trade him or whatever. And it's like, context is really important here. And again, I think there are not many guys who can step up to this degree without the two best players on a team and just carry a team like this. And that needs to be remembered within the Austin discourse, because I think it's sometimes forgotten. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. DK's value not going to restore, and LA just wasted back-to-back 17 picks. If we offer him plus a first on the night of that 37-point game for Kessler, will the Jazz agree? I don't think they would have agreed then, but it certainly would have been more of a conversation. But yeah, I mean, the Dalton value is, I got to be careful because of the aggregators, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm saying what I'm saying without saying it. But yeah, I mean, it's not good right now, right? Like, and that's not. I've already said that before. So if you want to aggregate it. But yeah, I mean, he's done himself no favors. Like he's really not had a good game this season, and with the like full group, like he's put up some numbers when the group was depleted, but in terms of like actual meaningful, what does this look like in the regular season, or what does this look like in dress rehearsal or sort of like the parts where it's the full group, he just has not played well. And at this point, it's still not like a giant sample size or even a big sample size, but it's becoming enough of a trend that it is a bit concerning. Bowen Chung, thank you for the super chat. Why do fans want to trade AR? The Lakers may have to decide on a new contract between AR and LeBron next season. Fans want to trade him because of the playoffs. And I have tried to dispel the notion that he underperformed as much as he did. Looking at his numbers, looking at his isolation defense against Ant and how he actually defended Ant the best statistically of anybody in that series, including Rui and Vando and Gabe and DFS. And it was Austin who actually did the best job against Ant. And yes, there are limitations to his game. He can't struggle with length and athleticism in terms of, opposing defenders. There are times he could get sped up a bit. And I think really the biggest one for me has been the jump shot sometimes can go and has gone, I think, at the wrong times later in a season where he just doesn't have his legs in the same like burst. But overall, I think he shapeshifted into a lot of different roles for the Lakers. I mean, remember early in his career, like the first couple of years, he was a defender, and he was a guy out there that the Lakers would use. And that was probably the first red flag of. I've had this conversation with a couple of people, but like the first red flag for that 2021-22 team was that like Austin Reaves came in and was locking up everybody, and like, you know, the fact that that group was that old and you know, they just couldn't defend anybody, and he immediately came in and was like their third or fourth best player already on, you know, the you know, Hall of Fame group on their last legs. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are certainly players that fit better with Luka. There are certainly players that are better than Austin, but I think the Lakers have a pretty good thing here with him, right? And it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps in the road. And again, he could easily struggle tomorrow night, and the people who want to trade him will come back on here and ask me about trading Austin in the super chats. But I don't know. I mean, for whatever reason, he's a divisive player. Like by far, since I've been doing this, I've been doing this now for over a year and a half. And the player that I've gotten like the most divisive questions on is Austin. I think LeBron's a close second, but you know, LeBron is just, a lot of people love LeBron. A lot of people hate LeBron. Like that's just, you know, he's a lightning rod in that sense. But Austin is another guy who is kind of in that boat of a lot of people either believe in him or don't believe in him for various reasons. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a way to keep Austin and LeBron depending on the type of contract LeBron's open to, but it's like the Lakers are going to have some big financial decisions to make next summer. Glenn, thank you for the super chat. Wes, Baylor, Wilt, Goodrich, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, 80, and Austin Reaves. Lakers with 50. Love his rigor shoes. Thank you for the great show. Appreciate it, Glenn. Yeah, that's quite the list to join. I mean, that just shows you Lakers history. And I mean, to have West, Baylor, Wilt, Goodrich, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, AD, to, you know, not to, like putting Austin aside, that's just an incredible group there. That's 8 first ballot Hall of Famers. So yeah, well, Austin's not quite there yet, but we'll see how his career continues to develop. But quite the company to be in. Angelco, thank you for the super chat. Yo, mad respect always. Jovan Buha, will the Lakers have enough cap space to keep AR and dominating? They should. They should. You know, I think DeAndre is playing his way into a larger contract. Like he's more than an $8 million center. Where exactly that market's going to be, you know, there's going to be about 10 teams with cap space projected as of right now going into next summer. So a lot of factors, right? Like he's got to stay healthy. He's got to continue performing well. It depends potentially on like the Lakers' success and how big of a part he is. But like right now, I think he's trending toward being more than an $8 million player. I think that's fair to say. Like now, is it a $15 million player, a $20 million player, a $25 million player? I have a hard time seeing it going above that, but we'll see. Like there's a lot of time left between now and next summer. But yes, they do have enough room to keep Austin and Ayton. LeBron certainly factors into this and what his contract looks like. And then they're going to have Rui, potentially Marcus Smart, depending on what he decides to do. And they're going to have to fill out the roster, obviously. So a lot of, you know, balls in the air that the Lakers are going to be juggling next summer. But tentatively, like, yes, they should be able to at least keep Austin and Ayton. Will they be able to add like the big max free agent? That's its own question and will be determined by what happens with LeBron. Lee Baggy, I want to see more Rui next game. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, it was interesting because he had such a hot start, right? And he had 10 points in the first quarter, scored 8 points the rest of the way, and kind of was phased out of the offense a little bit. I think the point I made earlier that I still stand by is like, or the point I made in today's stream earlier was that Rui's not really a guy who's going to like ISO, and he's not a shot creator in that sense, but I think he's a guy that, you know, you get on cuts, you get getting out in transition, you get on dribble handoffs, you get on kick out passes, and he is this barometer for the health of the Lakers offense. And if the ball is moving and snapping, Rui's a guy who's going to eat. Rui's a guy who's going to benefit. If it's stagnant and the ball is sticking too much in certain people's hands, or they're turning it over, the spacing isn't right, Rui's a guy who will be affected by that. So I thought there were pockets of the game where he was kind of out there with some of the groups that were struggling for a variety of reasons. It was not like his fault, but just the ball was not finding him. And I also think for Sacramento, like Rui is a laser, right? Like that's JJ's preferred term for shooters. Rui is the laser on this group, on this team. And the fact, I will say the fact that he only took 1 3 tonight, and we know he's not shy, like Rui likes shooting. So the fact that he only took 1 3, didn't make one, that to me is like, I think that the kick out portion of the Lakers tonight, like Austin was just gliding to the rim and drawing so many fouls that I think like typically some of those would be kick out passes for a Rui that just weren't there because Sacramento's defense is that bad. But for the other guys, like the Gabes and the Marcuses and the Ravias, like I look at them to try to generate more opportunities for Rui. I thought like they had a couple of nice deep seal post ups for him. And I think that's like a way to get him involved more, but he's not really a guy who you're going to be like, here's the ball at the top of the key, go create something. Like that's just not his game. He doesn't have the handle, honestly, to like, you know, if he does like a quick, assertive, catch the ball, triple threat, just rip through, try to beat his man, like he can potentially score that way. But if it's like Rui just dance with someone and take like a step back or a pull up, that's not really his game. But in general, I agree with you. Like he is the Lakers right now, third best scorer. Or, you know, it's right there with him and Ayton behind Austin. I think Ayton overall is just, he's got the bigger track. Like Rui's never averaged more than 13 points a game. Ayton's averaged almost 17 for his career. So I will give Ayton the nod there, but he's the number 3 guy right now. And that he should be a little bit more involved, especially with how involved he was in the first quarter. Joshua, thank you for the super chat. Vincent and Kleba need to be packaged for Brooks. Yeah, I think it probably costs you a first. Maybe it's a lottery protected first, but I would do that. Yes. I mean, I said, I think if there's a way to upgrade Gabe plus something, Gabe plus Dalton, Gabe plus Kleba for a starter or for like a high level bench guy, that to me takes this group's ceiling to a different level. And I think that is worth it. Samir Dude, thank you for the super chat. Any idea on how long Luka is going to be out? Is his finger sprain that serious, or does this have something to do with his groin? It's a combination of the finger sprain and the leg contusion. I gotta be careful what I say because sometimes I'll get aggravated out of context. But I think it's the combination that is keeping him out. I think if it was one, maybe he's available to go or a little bit earlier. But as I reported earlier in the Luka stream, I'm hearing that the 1 week timetable was intentional and that it's going to be pretty close to that. Now, the question is going to be technically 1 week from today. That covers 4 games. And then they play Miami on that 5th game on next Sunday. And then they have a back-to-back against Portland again, going to Portland for on Monday. So I don't yet have clarity as to like, is it going to be 4 games, 5 games, 6 games? I have a tough time seeing him miss a week and then immediately going into a back-to-back. Maybe that happens, but everything we've seen from the Lakers has been cautious to the point of like over cautious or over caution up to this point with all of their players and the injuries. So I have a hard time seeing them just being like, oh, well, Luka missed the week. Like, let's just throw him into a back-to-back. So my assumption as of right now is he's going to miss at least 5 of the next 6, potentially all 6, and then maybe come back that middle of the following week. But depends on how he fares over the next few days, obviously. Joshua, again, thank you for the super chat. Resigning AR is the right move, even if it is too late to trade him for Giannis. He's too valuable of an asset to let walk. This is 100% the argument I've been making since like January, February, when we've been having this Austin conversation about his value. It's just that he's going to be, I think, potentially a bargain or at least like market value in that 30 whatever range or maybe even upwards of 40, that at a minimum you are retaining that asset, locking it up, and then you can trade it in the 2026-27 season if you need to. And you need like you got to think about it this way, right? When you're trading for a superstar, you need attractive assets to get that player. You're not getting that player for a poo-poo platter of like expiring veterans in their early 30s. That's not how you're going to get a Giannis. That's not how you're going to get whoever is the next superstar that's potentially available. So you want a foundational type player in Austin who is now signed for multiple years. You want to have multiple picks, which the Lakers will have starting at the 2026 draft. Dalton will be an expiring $4.2 million contract. Maybe he shows something over the next year or so where it's at least like a low risk gamble on a player going into their third season. And then whatever contract situations the Lakers have with some, they have a lot of expiring contracts and different guys that we don't yet know like what their status will be. But you need like something that the other team wants, right? And I think a lot of times fans, when they're thinking of trades or acquiring a star, they're thinking about it from like their team's perspective. But it's like, why would a team, like a team's going to want like a lottery level guy, multiple like lottery picks, and the Lakers can't quite offer that, but you can offer Austin, who is looking like a future all-star. And especially if he goes to the East, I think he probably is an all-star. So that's at least like a step in the right direction, a big step in the right direction. And then with the picks and with potentially some of the other contracts, like whether it's Giannis or someone else, I think you start to have a realistic package, or you just keep Austin and then you bring in the star in a different way. But I think that's a key distinction here. Erickson, thank you for the super chat. Give Magnon all of DK's minutes. DK has horrid defensive instincts. Magnon looks solid on D, and I liked him attacking a closeout and dumping off to DA. Yeah, I thought he looked better than Dalton. It's comparing 3 minutes to 13, so we don't know how that would have looked in a larger sample size, but he's like the Lakers need defense, and he is a defender. That's how he got the two-way contract from the Lakers. And I thought, again, he defended solid. And to your point, and I made the point earlier, like he had the attacking the closeout, dump off to DA. DA missed it, but it should have been an assist. Yeah, the Dalton stuff is just rough. I don't really know what else to say. Fang Charlie, thank you for the super chat. AR wants the cheese to Buha. I'm coming to LA soon, and I got you, Norma, and Helena something. I also got tickets to San Antonio versus LA, so got to make sure we meet up. Hopefully we can work something out. PC. Yes, we do have to figure something out. I know I got to do your show, and that's awesome. I think that's actually like Luka should be back by that game at a minimum. So that's a really good game to be coming to. But I appreciate that. I appreciate you bringing a gift and look forward to meeting at the game. AD, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate it. Honcho, hey, Jovan, who do you think can make the 3-point contest this All-Star game from the Lakers? Do you know how the selection works? Rui, Luka, Reaves. I appreciate the super chat. Well, the selection process works in that the league has like, it's almost like a ranking of the players that they think make the most sense. And it's like a combination of who are the best shooters, which is relatively arbitrary, but obviously you can just look at like 3-point percentage, cross-reference that with volume and see who the best like high volume 3-point shooters are. There's an element of star power of they do like to have stars in it. So that's where a guy like Luka might not be a top 8 like high volume 3-point shooter necessarily, but because of the star power and because he is a really good 3-point shooter, then maybe he gets an invite. A lot of guys, it also depends on like, so you'll see sometimes like 2 or 3 of the guys will be like all stars and they're already going to be there. So they're okay with doing the 3-point shootout. But for a guy who's maybe about to go on vacation and it's like, do you want to just come to All-Star weekend to do the 3-point shootout and miss out on going to Cabo or Cancun or wherever you want to go? That can be tough for some guys because that's a valuable time to get a bit of a break, get away from the game and just like clear your head. Now, I will note this year it is in LA, so that's a factor that they wouldn't have to travel. Like it's one, it's been in some, we'll say rough cities by NBA standards over the last few years in terms of it kind of still being winterish time or like the end of winter time. I remember I went to the one in Toronto in 2016. It was -6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is some of the coldest weather I've ever been in. So like having it in Cleveland or Indiana or wherever, that can be tough in terms of like, it's not the most appealing for the players, especially when Cabo is calling your name. But being in LA and these guys already being there, I think that's a built-in advantage to potentially entice them. Between these three, I think Rui's probably the guy that would be the most likely, because I think he is someone who has been ramping up his volume. He's had a couple of back-to-back 40+% seasons, but you could also make the case, Luka naturally as he's going to make the All-Star team. He's probably going to be a starter. Luka will be in the mix, and then Austin, depending on like that one, probably comes down to does he make the All-Star team or not. If he doesn't, maybe he goes and golfs for 5 days or whatever he's going to do in his off time. But in terms of the selection, they send out the offers, and then it just comes down to do the players accept them or not. And then so if you're going to invite 8 guys, most likely the original or like the initial 8 guys you offer are not going to all accept. And then you go down the list until you get your field of 8. But even then, sometimes guys will get injured because remember, it's usually like a week and a half or so before All-Star weekend is when they announce these things. So maybe a guy gets injured and then you got to replace him with someone. And that's where also one of these guys could technically be a replacement if necessary. But I think Rui is probably the most likely. Jeff, thank you for the super chat. Love your insight. Do you think that Rui needs more threes per game? I'm thinking 6+ thoughts. Yeah, again, like I think Rui he's a sign of the health of the Lakers offense. He is someone who benefits from the playmaking, the advantage creation, getting downhill, paint touches, driving kick, all that stuff. That's where Rui is at his best in terms of benefiting off of those advantages. And you also have to remember, like right now he's playing without Luka as well, but like had been playing without LeBron. And so the Lakers are down a major playmaker. And once they get their full roster healthy here, potentially in the next couple of weeks, when you have Luka, Austin, and LeBron, you're going to have those guys all on the floor together with Rui likely as the 5th starter, and then potentially closing with him. But you're also going to have different shifts where it's like 2 of those guys plus Rui throughout the course of the game. So I think he's going to benefit more from having the full allotment of playmakers and passers and whatnot. But yeah, I think Rui is a guy who just pulling up his career numbers here, attempted 4.2 2 seasons ago, 5.0 last season. And he's progressively been going up from like 2 to 3, back down to 2, back up to 3, 3.5, 4, 5. So yeah, 5 to 6 to me feels about right for Rui. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Feel like Laravia is starting to figure it out. Yeah, I thought he looked much more comfortable today. And that was something I talked about on the Luka stream earlier. Was like, I felt like the silver lining to this all could be unlocking some of these guys and just seeing what their strengths are in a role where they have to do a little bit more. And of course, the ideal version of this team is not going to feature Marcus Smart and Jake LaRavia doing certain things offensively. It's more about them fitting in around Luka, Austin, and LeBron. But sometimes, like, again, kind of with I've referenced this with Gabe, like sometimes when you just touch the ball more and you get in a certain rhythm, like that can allow you to scale down a little bit and play a smaller role and still thrive in that smaller role. But some guys are just rhythm guys who need to touch the ball more. And it feels like LaRavia might be one of those types. And Lakers got to figure out the right balance of like not having him do too much, but also involving him enough. And that's something I think for multiple players on this roster. But yeah, I thought he looked much better tonight. I thought it was his best game preseason or regular season as a Laker. Darian, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, since you grew up a Lakers fan, who is your favorite Laker great growing up? What was your favorite Lakers championship you experienced? Favorite Laker growing up was Shaq, and I had an affinity for Shaq because I've always been a big kid. I was always well, now I'm a man, but maybe ask my wife. She'll say I'm still a big kid, but I growing up was always very tall for my age. So once I started playing basketball in 4th grade, I was immediately a center. And from that point on, basically always played center. So I think naturally I've had a connection to bigger players and to big men. And so I could relate to Shaq more because I didn't have the ball handling or the shooting of Kobe, but it was like I could post up, right? And that's the way I was used, was give me the ball in the post and go to like a little turnaround hook or something. So growing up like that was the player that I resonated more with. And I think a lot of times the way you connect to players, especially when you're younger, is if you can like kind of see yourself a little bit in their game or their playing style, or sometimes it's just like pure greatness and whatnot. But obviously, you know, I oddly, like I've said this before, this is kind of a weird fact about me, but like my favorite shoe of all time is the Adidas Kobe's, like the first ones. I guess now it's called the Crazy one, but like the Kobe one. And by far, like objectively, Kobe's Nike shoes are better, but there's something about that era with like the Audi inspired Kobe shoes that I just love, like those space boots and you know, moon boots that just it harkens back to like this nostalgia from when I fell in love with basketball. In terms of favorite championship, I think it's 2001, because that was 2001 was the first season I got into basketball. So that run of them going 15-1 in the playoffs, the series against AI and the Sixers in the finals, like that was just, that to me was like peak basketball. And then I would say 2002 was also like a close second one, because that was the first season I watched like from start to finish. I remember like I believe they played Golden State in Hawaii for the first preseason game, and like I watched that entire season, every single game, religiously, and I was like 8 or 9, and I just from that point on, that was like I was hooked. So I would say that one, like seeing it through, also being spoiled as like my first 2 seasons of watching basketball, having my team win the championship was you know, Laker fans are spoiled, but those would have to be my first 2. And then really my last Lakers fan like moment before I shifted, and I've talked about shifting into like professional mode and being in locker rooms and covering the sport and just kind of like my mindset with that. But it was like, so I graduated in 2010 in high school, and that was Lakers Celtics, obviously. So like that was kind of the crowning moment of like, all right, you know, they won back to back. I'm going into college now. And like, now I got to focus on being a reporter, not being a fan, and doing these things objectively. So that was kind of a nice like bookend moment for the 10 years of my basketball fandom going into college and going into my career. Joshua, thank you for the super chat. Rui's lack of other stats has become an issue. He should be getting 10 rebounds plus assists a game. These 3 rebound games in 40 minutes are concerning. Meanwhile, Laravia got 6 rebounds and 5 assists in 33 minutes. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is the knock on Rui. I thought DeRozan cooked him a bit tonight, one-on-one, which is why he should not be used as a wing stopper, despite the Lakers' insistence on using him that way. Also, just lack of alternatives. But yeah, the rebounding is a real thing. He's closer to like Marcus Smart and Gabe Vincent as a rebounder than he is to Vando or Jake LaRavia. Because you mentioned LaRavia. Vando had 5 rebounds in 27 minutes. So LaRavia played 7 fewer minutes, had 3 more rebounds. Vando, we know, is a better rebounder, but he played 13 fewer minutes, a couple more rebounds. So this is kind of the knock, and I want to give a nod to LFR for this comparison, but they started comparing, or they made a comparison of Rui to Rashard Lewis, and that's kind of the way he is right now, where he's basically, he's really a stretch 4, and he can do more than just shoot threes, because we've seen the ability to cut, the ability to get out and transition as a finisher, the ability to rack a closeout and attack a drive, and or attack a rotating player and drive and get to the basket. But he's kind of stretch 40, and the issue with that is like there's not a lot of assists or ball movement or creation for others, and there's not a lot of rebounding. And he will occasionally uncork a 7 rebound, 8 rebound, 9 rebound, 10 rebound game, but that's few and far between, and it's just not a strength of his. And that's where Rui, I made this point now a bunch of times, but I think the ideal slotting of Rui, if he's going to be a starter, is having an elite rim protector who's also an elite rebounder, and an elite wing defender who's also a pretty good rebounder. And a couple of examples are Minnesota and OKC with Gobert and McDaniels and J-Dub and Hartenstein or Chet. But that's not the Lakers build. And that's why I see a little bit of a limitation, because DeAndre Ayton is a solid to good rim protector. He's not an elite or great rim protector. He's a good rebounder, but he's not a great rebounder. And then, I guess you could say when LeBron's healthy, he's a good to great rebounder, especially for his size. And if you're playing him at the 3 or the 4, whatever. But the defense, obviously, it depends on the night. It depends on the matchup. There's a lot of factors that go into LeBron's defense. So I don't think the Lakers have quite the optimal build to hide Rui and some of his deficiencies. So that's where I see a current limitation in his placement with this group. It's pretty much like if he's not making shots or scoring, he's not bringing much else to the table other than gravity. Like the gravity is important for sure. But ideally, he's a guy who is averaging 7 to 9 rebounds. The assists, it's whatever. They have enough passing on this team, but I would like to see 7 to 9 rebounds consistently, and I just don't think that's really part of his development at this point. Mac Roblox 94, thank you for the super chat. Great night for the Lakers. I think they should pursue a trade for Keon Ellis. Trade for him and a 2032 second round pick. Oh, I think you're saying trade connect for him and 2030. I was waiting for the Keon Ellis question because I know the chat loves Keon Ellis. There's a lot to love. He fouled out in only 18 minutes. I thought he got some of the worst calls against him tonight. I think he probably got at least 1 or 2 that should have been rescinded, in my opinion. But he did hit a 3 early. He had that dunk. And yeah, I mean, I would trade Dalton for him in a heartbeat. And if it only costs a second, then yeah, I don't know if Sacramento does that, but they need some defense, right? They can't only play offensive players, but I do really like Keon Ellis. Mr. TD, Rui is spotting up hard to rebound. Offensively, yes. And I'm not expecting the offensive rebounds, but defensively, I think, he does play the 4 sometimes. It really depends on the matchup, but especially with this starting group, he's the 4 defensively. And the fact that he plays 40 minutes and grabs 3 rebounds, I'm not, to be clear, it's not really it is a knock on him. So I'm not going to say it's not a knock on him, but it's just not been. So here are his game logs through the season: 35 minutes against Golden State, 4 rebounds; 32 minutes against Minnesota, 2 rebounds; 40 minutes against Sacramento, 3 rebounds. He has not topped 4 rebounds in a game yet, and he has played 32 plus minutes in all 3 games. And for his career, he's under 5 rebounds a game. He's averaging 3 rebounds a game on the season. I don't he's not a good rebounder. That's okay, because he does provide a lot of other things, but ideally your starting 4 is a better rebounder than Rui is. Or even if he's your starting 3, he's it's more palatable if he's your starting 3. And we could debate that with him next to LeBron and Ayton. But with Luka, LeBron, and Ayton, you probably get by fine with it in terms of those 3 guys are such good rebounders that collectively the Lakers should be fine. But I think the bigger issue is more he's being used as a wing stopper in that lineup, theoretically, and Rui's not a wing stopper. It's just not his skill set. Dylan, thank you for the super chat. TBH, I don't understand the hype and glaze over OKC. Their playoff run last year was one of the easiest paths to a championship in a long time. Remember who was the last player to eliminate the Thunder? Dylan getting at Luka having his way against the Thunder. I'm of 2 minds of this, right? Because you can poke a lot of holes in their playoff run, and I think that's fair. I thought overall Denver was probably once we had the full picture of the season, right? And it's easy to kind of retroactively say certain things, and you can accuse me of that with this statement, but I thought once we had the proper perspective of the season, and we had the sample size of the regular season, we had the sample size of the playoffs, I thought Denver was the second best team in the West, and Minnesota was arguably the 3rd best team in the West. So I would contend that maybe healthy Golden State was the third best team in the West. I think Golden State would have had a real shot to beat Minnesota had Steph not gone down in game one. But like, I thought they arguably played the two best teams in the West, in my opinion, outside of themselves. Like Denver was, to me, pushed them the hardest, and that was pretty close there. Like, obviously Indiana pushed them to 7 as well, but that was pretty close in terms of like, I thought the Denver series was harder for them, but you could debate that. And then Minnesota, they made light work of, but Minnesota, we saw what they did to the Lakers. They beat Golden State, though. Again, I think that would have been close. So I think part of the hype is like how young they are. I think Chet has looked, I don't know how much you've watched of OKC. Chet to me is leveling up right now with J-Dub out. That's scary. I think Kason Wallace is starting to level up. Shea has been pretty much at the same level, if not even slightly better to start the season. And Hartenstein, Caruso, they're already in their primes. Like AJ Mitchell is breaking out off the bench. Like this is just a young team with all these assets that they can even make a bigger trade if they really want to, but it doesn't seem like they're inclined to. But I think a lot of the hype in Glaze is they won 68 games. They had the best net differential and net point differential net rating of all time. And they won the championship. And I think already we've seen them have a couple of close games, a couple of double overtime games that they won, both of them. And like, there's just this championship, like, experience with them. And it doesn't seem to be a championship hangover. Like they're just as hungry as they were last season, if not more hungry now. So I thought the finals, certainly Indiana coming out, like that Indiana team was better than we thought they were, but I think everyone expected OKC Boston. And once Boston lost and Tatum got injured, that kind of changed the perception of the quality of the path. And then the first round they played Memphis, that was easy, and Ja got injured. So I think the first round and the finals, you could argue, were easier than maybe like the typical year. But I thought Denver and Minnesota as second and third round opponents were pretty tough. Minnesota's made back-to-back conference finals. We can debate some of their weaknesses, but I think they're a pretty good team. Now, to your last point here, Luka's success against OKC and their inability to speed him up and turn him over and kind of rattle him, because that's the strength of that team is their defense is just pure chaos and havoc. That is a reason to be bullish about the Lakers matching up with OKC this season and longer term. But I mean, they're 3-0. Like, I don't know. I get some of the skepticism, but I think for me, at least, like I was among I picked Denver to win the series, and I still contend they probably should have won the series had Michael Porter Jr. not had one shoulder and had Aaron Gordon not gotten injured. And they had this bench. I said it over the summer. If they had the current bench that they have, I think they win the series, but they didn't. We didn't know how injured J-Dub was at the time. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Once they won the championship, for me, I changed my opinion on OKC of like, they proved it. It's hard to quibble with that. Thomas, do you think mid teams looking to shed salary will value expiring contracts of Gabe and Kleba, and low salary, in parentheses, low risk / high reward contract of Connect? Depends on the team, but you have to remember that if it's anyone trading for Gabe or Kleba, they're going to be trading contracts they want to get off of. So for the Lakers, you got to find the sweet spot of, like, someone asked me last stream about, or a couple streams ago, about Jeremy Grant, right? And Jeremy Grant has had a good start to the season, but he's making $32, $34, and then $36 million. So could they potentially flip those two or even those three? The salary's a little low, but let's just say the salary is a little bit higher. Could they flip that for Jeremy Grant? Sure. But now you're taking on all this extra money and years with a guy like Jeremy Grant. So I think that the challenge for the Lakers, and this is where Wiggins to me is so appealing, Dylan Brooks as well, is those guys have extra years, but they're at a manageable salary where it's not like you're taking on this albatross contract that's going to really tie up your cap situation. But the challenge here is finding the player who's on either a contract through 2027 or through 2028. So like an extra year or two, but it's not at a number that's going to kill you. And they're at a level where like there's still a clear starter or there's still like a high level bench guy, right? So with Jeremy Grant, I think the floor and he's just an example because he was someone that was asked about a couple streams ago, but like, I think his floor is a little bit too low for what you want, as we've seen at times over the last couple of years. And then also just that contract, there's almost no way you could talk yourself into Jeremy Grant being worth in the mid 30s. He's just no longer that type of player. And I don't know if he ever really was that player, but certainly what we've seen from him over the last couple of years, he's not worth that contract. So I think the Venn diagram is pretty small in terms of player that's like on a multi-year contract that a team is going to be willing to give up for a Gabe and Connect. But that will increase in value as teams, like I've talked about, New Orleans, Phoenix. Some teams are going to underachieve. Some teams are going to have injuries. Some teams are going to have to look in the mirror and be like, we're a playing team. We got to make a trade. So that's when the Lakers can strike. But that's probably in that December, not even probably, that is in that December to February range, probably closer to February. But so I think those contracts can have value combined. It's just, again, there are a lot of contracts that teams would probably trade for those guys. It's just, would the Lakers take on that salary and would they want that contract, right? Because teams are going to want to get off crappy contracts, and the Lakers are not going to want to take on crappy contracts. So it's got to be like that very tiny sweet spot of player who's like at a certain level, making a certain amount over a certain amount of years, that the Lakers are willing to take that on, and the team, for whatever reason, wants to get off of it. Because the flip side of this is like, if it's too good of a player or too good of a contract, why does the team want to get off of it, right? Like, so you got to find like this asset that this team wants to get off of that the Lakers also want to take on. And that's a pretty small group of players, in my opinion. But I do think Wiggins and Brooks check those boxes of, you could see arguments for why Miami and Phoenix would want to get off of them, depending on the assets they're getting back. And I also think they're enough of an upgrade over what the Lakers are potentially giving up. I missed this one from Gary. Sorry. Gary asks, thank you for the super chat, how many first round picks do the Lakers have to trade? They have 1 first round pick to trade. They will have 3 as of draft night. The one thing that I've talked about this and others have talked about this, but I want to be clear with the draft night thing, is like, that's including their 2026 pick, which the second you make that pick, unless you're trading it in the moment or you get like a really big draft night steal, that pick does lose some value because teams prefer the mystery box of like having this pick that they can decide on. And you can obviously, let's just say hypothetically, well, I'm not going to go down the honest road, but let's just say there's a star player out there who the Lakers feel like they can get on draft night, and it's a surprise player that becomes available. They can trade that pick like that day, get that player, and then that team can make that pick, or they can make the pick on behalf of that. Like, let's say for whatever reason, the team and or the Lakers just feel more comfortable or can't really execute the trade until after free agency starts. So we're talking like first week of July, second week of July, whatever. You can maybe like wink it and be like, okay, we're going to draft this pick on behalf of, for you. And then we'll trade it to you in a couple of weeks, like once we can execute the deal. So that's a possibility there. So right now, 1, as of draft night, 3, but then post draft night, it'll just be 2. So, obviously they could add the draft pick like post drafting him, but now it's like, it's kind of like like you've driven the car off the lot at that point, right? So it's lost a little bit of value. All right. What does it matter, bruh? One of my favorite handles in the game. Thank you for the super chat. Dalton got to get off my team, bro. He's still getting yelled at by JJ about where to be on the floor. Him and AR were both yelling at him in the third. The Dalton stuff is rough. And I continue to say, like, I think the biggest issue for him has been the processing and the mental part of the game. I think on both sides, because it's not just like the defensive side we see, which is the defense limitations despite his athleticism. But how many times has he been yelled at for forgetting a play? Like, that's just something you can't do at the NBA level. And it's happened to him, I don't even know how many times at this point. So yeah, it's not, I don't know. Like I think at this point it's sunk cost and they have to figure out the way to move forward. Going to go about 15 more minutes until an hour 30. Joshua says Lakers aren't going to mess up their 2027 max cap space for Grant when Giannis could be available. They're not. I was using the Grant example because someone had asked me about that a couple streams ago, but it was like the point was more so that's the type of player that like the Lakers, again, the money doesn't even align. So Grant is just like, you have to give up Rui to get Grant. The Lakers are not going to give up Rui to get Grant. The point, the larger point was like, that's the type of contract that a team would be willing to get off of for a Gabe and Kleba type in terms of that expiring money. But that doesn't make sense for the Lakers because he's not good enough and it's too bad of a contract. So my larger point was just that finding the sweet spot of like it's probably got to be a player in the Gabe and Kleba together make about 29-ish. Oh, sorry. No, 22-ish, 22, 23. So you probably want a player in that like $18 to $22 million range. If you just go through the list, there's only so many players in that range. And even Wiggins is a bit above that. So you got to throw in Dalton, or you might have to have Rui as the base. And I was mixing it up because Rui plus Gabe or Kleba, that's 29. And that gets you more so in the Wiggins ballpark. So yeah, no, I totally agree. Lakers are not messing up. I don't know how real the honest stuff is anymore. We'll see. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff with him wanting to go to New York. But regardless of Giannis, like the Lakers do have their sights on the next big co-star to put with Luka and hopefully for them, Austin. And they're not going to mess that up for a guy like Jeremy Grant. But that's my point is you can't flip their expirings. It's just teams are going to want to get off bad money and you got to be careful you don't take on bad money. And I don't think the Lakers are going to take on bad money. So that it's just a small pool of players that they can trade for. Ooh, to the Wii. Thank you for the super chat. OKC loses the finals if Tyrese Halliburton doesn't go down. OKC was shook. I agree. And it would have been it would have been very much like shades of 2016 where Golden State 73 wins. They're coming off of the 67-year breakout. They win the title. Excuse me. And they have this like perfect season, basically 73 wins. They break the Bulls record and then they lose in game 7. And that would have kind of been the OKC season of they win 68 games. They break the record for point differential and net rating and all this stuff. Then they lose in 7 in the finals. Would have been like the ultimate title. Shibugan, thank you for the super chat. Missed the game. Judging by Twitter, it's past midnight and Gabe has turned back into a pumpkin. Well, Gabe is injured. Gabe is in a walking boot. So I guess he's a pumpkin in a walking boot, or one of his appendages is a walking boot. Yeah, Gabe did not have a good game. I thought defensively he was fine and like largely did what the Lakers need him to do. I thought he drew a semi-egregious 3-point shooting foul that to me was just kind of one of those ones that I wouldn't have called personally. And it was kind of a bailout in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, 0 for 4 shooting in 19 minutes. I thought he took a couple of questionable shots and just not great. Dylan, thank you for the super chat. I've liked the trade idea with Trey Murphy, Rui, DK, and Filler, Maxey/Gabe, and draft capital for a return of Trey Murphy, Sadiq Bey, or Hawkins to make it work. So I think that's not enough. I think for Herb Jones or Trey Murphy, you probably got to give up Austin, and I don't think the Lakers do that. Trey Murphy, remember the offseason report, they want like 2 young players and 2 like 2 young, good assets and 2 picks. And that's like the starting point. I think it was like 2+ picks. So doesn't mean they're going to get that, but that is a Rui, Dalton, and Filler plus 1 pick because the Lakers can only trade 1 pick. They could obviously throw in swaps or seconds. That's nowhere in the same ballpark. So I think if you're not getting the 2 attractive young assets, because I'm not considering Dalton an attractive young asset right now, and you're not getting 2 picks, like I just don't. I see them maybe budging on one of those 2, but not both. So I don't think that's enough for Trey Murphy. I think it would have to be Austin. And then at that point, that's a totally different conversation. And I've made this point before. I think both sides would think they're giving up the better player and ask for more. And I think there would be a strong disagreement and stalemate between who adds a pick or whatever into that equation. So I think it probably doesn't happen. Chris, in what scenario would the Lakers be able to keep AR? I know it's a possibility we could lose him for nothing. Thank you for the super chat. I mean, they're in the driver's seat. They could offer him the biggest contract. So I'm not saying it's necessarily going to go to his max. Like we'll see how the rest of the season plays out, but the Lakers can offer the most years and the most total money next summer. So as long as they come correct and don't get too cute with the negotiations, I think like everything I've heard from just all the chatter with Austin and the Lakers has been he wants to remain a Laker and he wants to be a Laker for life. He does not want to leave. He enjoys being a Laker. He enjoys playing in LA. He enjoys the fan base and he's very happy. He's the organization and Jeannie and Rob and everybody. So he wants to stay. So I think if he ends up somewhere else, something went wrong somewhere, because up to this point, even with the contract negotiation, there was like a little or extension offer. There was a little bit of like, I'm turning down this amount of money, but like I have to bet on myself and know how much I'm worth. And it looks like, I mean, he's going to clear that contract extension offer by a lot, but it was tough for him to turn that down. Dylan follows up. This gives us a young player for a future or a trade asset for Giannis next offseason in a package, including Trey and Austin sign and trade, including draft capital. Yeah, I mean, it would be great if the Lakers could pull it off. I just think based on New Orleans's reported asking price for Trey, and to be completely honest, even just like my opinion of that package, Rui in a first is not anywhere close to. Trey Murphy's a much better player and is younger and is on a better contract. Like a pretty good contract situation. So I unfortunately don't think the Lakers can get it without giving up Austin. Braden, thank you for the super chat. I love watching AR play basketball, man. When he gets into the flow state, it's special. Yeah, like those threes he made in the fourth quarter to basically ice the game. I mean, that last three that he was off balance. It was kind of like, it was a little Steph-esque with the just kind of off balance, like flink, like almost push shot from three. And he just drilled it. And yeah, I mean, it was Austin's flow state is fun to really watch. Scott, thank you for the super chat. We get a win. AR gets in the history books and his agent gets out best cigars. Hope Lakers Collective does a breakdown of his night. Go LA. Yes, we will. We've already been texting. We will have a nice Austin breakdown and talking about the Lakers without Luka on Thursday when we go live next for the Lakers Collective with myself and Trevor Lane and Jason Timpf. Yeah, it was a fun night. And this was, the Lakers needed this night. Cause again, regardless of what happens tomorrow, like you at least got one without Luka, and then you can really focus on, like they got to focus on Portland, but then it's such a quick turnaround that then you got to look ahead to the road trip with Minnesota and Memphis. Gary Singh, Ayton is actually a very good one-on-one defender. I've been really impressed with Ayton's one-on-one defense. He's switched on to guards and wings and held up. I think I think there's sometimes possessions where he doesn't make the second effort or the extra rotation, and that would really be up, like at this point, my only criticism of his defense. And sometimes, like, I think we saw Levine drive at him a few times. Like, Levine's so athletic and just like he's Levine, so he's going to make some of those. But like, I think that the couple things would be like some of the help defense with Ayton. And when guys like really challenge him at the rim, we've seen some of the limitations. But in general, especially on the perimeter, I think he's held up really well against guards and wings and just corralling them, keeping them in front, preventing penetration. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he's been a bright spot. There's not been a lot of bright spots with the defense so far, but he's been one of them. Ryan Rich, Lakers are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA. Good luck trying to outscore us when we are healthy. We still need to work on the defense, though. Agreed. I think the Lakers are a top 5 offense and potentially a top 3 offense. And we're seeing that even when they're without their 2 best offensive players, which in theory, this is a top heavy group that shouldn't be able to put up the type of offensive numbers they're putting up tonight without Luka and LeBron. They still put up a big offensive performance. I believe had a 119 offensive rating tonight, dropped 127. Defense is still a work in progress, although tonight was actually their best defensive performance up to this point. But at least from like a defensive rating perspective. Kane Carter, hey Jovan, what gave you the fearlessness to not be afraid to make enemies with players even if they hate you? Does that ever sting a bit? Yeah, I mean, I dislike being I dislike being disliked, right? Like I'm human. Even now, like I think my first or second year on as a beat reporter was my second year covering the Clippers before I switched over to covering the Lakers, and I had a big story about the Clippers chemistry, and it was a controversial story, and it was a story that upset the team and upset the players. And we dropped it while I was on a road trip. So it was a super awkward road trip, like going in the locker room and going to shoot around and just being around the team because already on a road trip, you're a little bit more isolated. You're not in the comforts of your homes and like your home routine and all this stuff. So you're and for me, like I still had not traveled to a lot of NBA cities or arenas yet. So some of these places, it's my first time being there. I'm learning the airports and all this stuff. So like, there's kind of this already, I'm feeling like a bit isolated, a bit lonely or whatever. Then I dropped this thing and like, I'm dealing with all this backlash and people are mad at me and players are calling me out on Twitter and fans are calling me out, unfollowing me. It's again awkward in the locker room. People won't look at me. People won't talk to me. I think that was a formative experience for me because that kind of like it was in some ways like multiple experiences in one, and it sort of like toughened me up or gave me a little bit of a harder shell for dealing with criticism and backlash and like negativity. And then since then, switching to the Lakers, I think that the big thing has been the aggregation and people taking me out of context or only taking me out of context entirely, where like they will say I said one thing when I never said it, or I said one thing and then they twist what that meant, or they only quote part of what I said and it's completely devoid of the context of like, maybe it's often framed as if like I'm reporting something or like bringing something up, when more often than not, it's like a super chat or something that the chat's asked me like 10 times. And I'm finally like, all right, I'll address this, like the whole LeBron situation. But, then I get backlash from, I got a bunch of threats and harassment. I got people hitting me up on IG. I got people hitting me up on TikTok. And like, at this point, I'm kind of used to it that, it's still not fun. It's still not like, I don't like dealing with that stuff. I'd rather not. But at this point, I'm kind of desensitized to it and, try to just block out the noise where I can. But in terms of the player stuff, the player one is a little tricky because you like, especially I've been fortunate that some of the players I've had beef with, let's say, like have not been long-term pieces of that team. Right. So Russell Westbrook, D'Angelo Russell, like those are not guys that were going to be with the Lakers for that long. So it ended up kind of working out, but obviously it'd be a little bit different if I had like a beef with Luka or like a LeBron, right? Because that's, or an Austin, right? Like those are mainstays that like, it's a little bit different. So I've never had, I guess maybe Kawhi was like the closest I had beef with a star player, but really it's never beef. Like for me, it's I just try to speak honestly and I report certain things that, was reporting stuff on Russ that he didn't like, reporting stuff on D'Lo he didn't like, and then also talking about their games honestly, and they both underperformed, all things considered. So I just try to keep it as honest as I can, and sometimes that's going to ruffle some feathers, and I don't like getting into beef with people, but it's hard to stay out of it sometimes, unless you just don't say anything, and I'm just not a robot. What does it matter, bruh? Thank you for super chat. Looking to more Magnon minutes. DK got to be benched. I'm with that. I've again 3-minute shift for Magnon, so it's a little. I want to see more of him, but so far, I mean, he looked like a solid defender. Telly Khalifa asking about the beef with the Clippers. So I had an article about the preferential treatment of Kawhi and PG and some of the things that were going into their first season with the group, and some of the clash between like Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, and Pat Beverly versus Kawhi and PG. And my favorite part of the whole saga, because they denied it and whatever, but then like they lose in the bubble. Remember, they blew the 3-1 lead against Denver, and the first multiple people, Doc Rivers, and then multiple players, the first sentiment in like their first thing of like where things went wrong with this series was like, well, we didn't have good chemistry. Like we weren't on the same page. Like and I was like, well, I reported this 9 months ago and you guys all denied it. And that was just like a thing with that group that there was just some butting heads in that locker room. And I had, I believe, like 12 sources on that. So it also wasn't something where I just like talked to one or two people. Like I talked to a bunch of people. I also co-reported the first one with Sam Amick. And then later on, I did another one that was just reported by myself. But yeah, it was not like when you drop a bomb like that as a beat writer, it is like, in some ways it is like a burned bridge, and it's hard to kind of mend those fences. Long John, thoughts on Dylan Jones joining the South Bay Lakers? I talked about this last stream. I don't really know his game that well, but Mike Garcia, who I've had on the show before and who I really respect his player evaluation, compared him to THT, but a little bit of a better ball handler and decision maker and rebounder. So that piqued my interest. So I'm interested to see what he looks like with South Bay and just judging if he can be a two. Cool tie. Lakers receive Mikal Bridges, Mitchell Robinson, and Keon Ellis. Knicks receive Austin Reaves, Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber. Kings receive Dalton Connect and a first from New York. I think Kings probably do this. I do not think the Knicks do this. Lakers probably. That's a lot for the Lakers. They're not giving up a first. They're just giving up Austin, and you're getting Bridges, Robinson, and Ellis, where you could argue, I think Austin currently is a better player than Mikal Bridges, but obviously Robinson and Ellis are upgrades over Vincent and Kleber respectively. But for New York, I think the challenge here is I don't think Austin and Jalen Brunson are a great fit together, especially with the defensive limitations. And I've said this before, but I think there's a big difference between putting Austin with like a Brunson or a Trey versus a Luka, because Luka's at least 6'7", 240, whereas Trey and Jalen Brunson are both very small guards who could be picked on every possession. So it's a little bit different, where even when guys try to go at Luka, Luka's got a certain positional size and he's a good rebounder, where like Luka's floor defensively is just so much higher, in my opinion, than a Brunson or a Trae Young. And he also technically is a forward defensively. He's not a guard. So the sweet spot there is finding the player who can guard guards and guard forwards to complement Austin and Luka. You almost can't do, like, it's very hard to do that next to Austin and Brunson or Austin and Trae Young, those type of really small guards plus Austin. So I think New York says no. I think the Lakers consider this strongly. Kings say yes, but Knicks ultimately say no. All right. Doug has been taken care of. If we got any mods in here, please feel free to block. Rich, thank you for the super chat. Well, let's end on this one, and then I will call it pecking order: LeBron 3, AR 2, Luka 1. Thoughts. That might be like the most sustainable way for getting LeBron healthy through the rest of the season. I just don't see Austin surpassing LeBron. Well, like LeBron last year was 6th in MVP voting, 6th in All NBA voting, like undeniably a top 10 player. And part of that was the defense, but obviously the primary force was how great he was offensively. So I think maybe it's like more of a 2A, 2B, and LeBron's the 2A, Austin's the 2B, but I have a hard time. Like Luka's clearly the number one, and that's undeniable. And that's like how it should be. But AR versus LeBron, and to be clear, like LeBron's the better player. LeBron's the better offensive player. I think this is more of just year 40 or year 41, basically. Age 41, year 23, LeBron already coming off this sciatica thing that just might not go away all season. He might have to just manage it all year. You want to be careful with the workload, but I still think when LeBron's out there, he's going to be LeBron. And like, we've just never, like, outside of a brief stretch to start last season where his shot was off and he was kind of struggling a little, like a bit by his standards, LeBron has just always looked like LeBron, and I have a hard time seeing him not looking like LeBron. So I think it'll probably end up shaking out as Luka 1, LeBron 2, Austin 3. Maybe Austin's more of like maybe Austin's usage is close to LeBron's and he's more like the playmaker, ball handler. LeBron's playing more off ball. Maybe his assists go down a little bit. His usage goes down a little bit. But in terms of like the pecking order of the offense, I still think LeBron's going to be number 2. Now, again, if we're talking like what's best for him being able to be healthy come April, May, June, him taking a slight step back might be that, but it's just, that's easier said than done for a player who can still produce at the level that I assume he can still produce at, and I have no reason to think he can't produce at that level. So I think it's probably going to have to be Austin taking a slight step back. LeBron assuming it's now, is LeBron going to play the rest of the season in back to back? Like we don't know what the management protocol is going to be for him and what his health is going to be, and maybe the sciatica rears up at certain points. And that's when obviously Austin ascends to a different level offensively. But I think, again, maybe from like a ball handling, playmaking duties perspective, it is Luka 1, Austin 2, LeBron 3. But I think from like a usage percentage and like a scoring perspective, I do think LeBron will probably still be ahead of Austin. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for rocking. All right, well, we got a Harry Chinani. Harry's going after Rui and his rebounding. I appreciate the super chat, Harry. Then I will wrap after this one. I'm annoyed with Rui's rebounding numbers. He has to take a leap in that category. He does. I don't know if that's really in the cards for him. Like looking at his career rebounding numbers, his career rebounding has actually gone down. He averaged a career high 6.1 as a rookie, then 5.5. Then it dipped a bit, 3.8, 4.3 in the half season in Washington to 4.7 in LA, then 4.3, 5, then 3. So he only has, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's played 7 years, and in 3 of them, he's averaged 5 or more, but he's never averaged more than 6.1. So even 6.1, I think, is a little low for like the build and how much the Lakers need help on the glass. But that would obviously be a welcomed development, what would be him getting back to the 6.1. But it's been 6 years since then. So at some point, I feel like players kind of show you who they are. And Rui is still a good player. Rui is still an effective player. Rui is still a valuable player. It's just there's levels to it. And he ideally needs to do more than score. And at this point, his primary value is scoring and spacing, which is valuable. But when you're starting and playing the positions that he's playing, the Lakers need better defense and rebounding from him. And it's hard to like just change like who a player is or what they can do at this point when they're in their mid-20s, right? Like he's 27. He's going to turn 28 in February. He's supposed to be in his prime right now. So I don't know. But I think that's why, like, longer term, he's probably more of a bench player for this team. I don't know if he can be a full-time starter, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But appreciate the super chat. I'm going to wrap here, though. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back in less than 24 hours, coming to you live after Lakers Blazers. I will be at the game. It is here in LA. Then we'll be coming home and going live. Talk to you all then. Shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to the chat. Appreciate you all. And we'll talk to you all very soon.